waking up on all our ancestors in this space tonight. So they all felt us right there. And how I usually start my podcast, I like to start off with a little prayer. So I wanted to send love to anybody suffering from domestic violence issues. I want to send love to anybody suffering from mental health issues. I want to send love to our unhoused community. I want to send love to all of you for being here tonight, because it took a lot. I want to send love to the land, Oakland, the town, Uchin, and lastly, I want all of us to raise our fists together. And we raise our fists in solidarity with Congo, Sudan, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, here in Turtle Island, all of it. We raise our fists for all of those, and we burn wagons from here to there, from the res to Rafa, from the res to Puerto Rico, from the res to everywhere where the colonization has taken us and taken our culture, taken our language, taken all that from us. That's why we're here tonight. And you're wherever your ancestors are from, they brought you here tonight to be with us and to share our stories. So Yahui Yake Apede, Yahui Kanimachidu. Thank you to our Creator and thank you to our blessings. Oh.
Real quick, y'all, just wanted to make sure housekeeping stuff. We got some food over here and there are drinks. So there's bottles of water and the bathrooms are that way and then that way. So through those doors, and I think to the left, don't quote me on that. If you don't find it, please don't be mad at me. All right, we're going to bring the first round of podcast guests up. And then we're going to have, Juan, are you reading their bios?
Yeah, I got it.
Right on, okay.
Yeah, all you guys can come up, all my podcast guests. Let's give a big O for the podcast guests. Oh! There we go. O for Eastside Arts Alliance. Oh! All right, so here we go. One of my guests is Sheridan Noelani Inamoto. That's my intro song. Alright, thank you guys so much. My first guest is Sheridan, is a Kanaka Maori Kai of mixed ancestry. She is dedicated to protecting Mauna Kea and advocating for aloha, aina, and comes from a long line of resilient resistors guided by love and unwavering commitment to community service. And Basma, and I want to pronounce that correctly, Ruman, they, them, is a Lebanese clinical social worker and organizer with the Palestinian youth movement, Basma. Basma's relationship to resistance is also deeply weaved into their artistic practice as they find that art conveys their deepest dreams of liberation and their deepest wounds from system of oppression. Shah Noor is a writer, multimedia visual artist, and public scholar crafting narratives at the nexus of Black feminist thought and queer diaspora studies. For all my guests, thank you guys. Alright. What is happening right now in your homelands, and how does it feel connected to the larger global political context that we're in today? And Shah, you can go first, because I believe you had that poem you wanted to read.
I do. Hi everyone, my name is Shawnor, my pronouns are they, them, and I'm going to answer this question about what is happening in Sudan with a poem that is inspired by June Jordan. She wrote a poem called Moving Towards Home in 1982. This is dedicated to Sudan and all people who are experiencing genocides in this moment. I do not wish to speak about genocide. I need to speak about bodies drowned under the Nile's waters. I do not want you to imagine the red dirt and the bulldozer. I need to speak about the children, the hungry, and the hurt. I do not wish to speak about 12 months of war, 4 years of revolution, 30 years of betrayal. I need to speak about the love buried under broken buildings. I do not want you to imagine nights filled with terror. I need to speak about the screaming babies crying out for freedom. I do not wish to speak about burning villages and ancestral lands. I need to speak about the cities on fire. The smoldering flesh, the lifetimes turned to ashes, the lineages ended too early. I do not want you to imagine genocide. I need you to understand mass murder, systemic slaughter, methodical massacre, the death of home. I do not need you to speak about genocide. I need you to understand the ceaseless rattle of bullets in your bones. I do not wish to speak about genocide. I need to speak, I must speak of genocide before all the dreams die, before I cannot speak, before they take me next, before they take you next, before we cannot speak, before there is no one left to speak for. I do not want you to imagine genocide. I want you to imagine freedom, and I need you to know it's happening. So to summarize, in Sudan, we have had, in 2019, a revolution that ousted a 30-year dictatorship during which obviously there was already a genocide happening in West Darfur, in South Sudan, and East Sudan, right? And prior to this 30 years of dictatorship, there was multiple centuries of colonization. In 2021 and escalating in 2023, we have experienced a counter-revolutionary war between two generals who are essentially punishing the Sudanese people for standing up for their right for freedom. I do not think this should be construed as a civil war or a war between tribes or African people just fighting amongst each other. This is intentionally a situation in which it's a proxy war in which the United States, the UK, and Europe are vying for power in Sudan and punishing the Sudanese people for daring to desire freedom. So the Sudanese people are still striving for their sovereignty. It's not a tribal war, it's a proxy war. The US and the UK are implicated, and so are all of us. Thank you.
Chairman?
So aloha kako. There it is. I would say being Kanaka Maoli or Native Hawaiian with Hawaii, I would say I would start with ku'e, which is the word for resistance, and Kanaka Maoli have been resisting since the time of Captain Cook, from 1778 when Captain James Cook arrived on the shores of Hawaii Island. There has been resistance. In fact, he died at the hands of Kanaka Maoli on February 14th, and everybody remembers that day. That's our Valentine's Day. And since that time, there always has been resistance, from colonialism, from even creating the sovereignty of Hawaii, Lahaui, the nation of Hawaii. We had to fight. We had to fight for our independence when France came, and there was a fight to be able to can maintain our nation. And then there's just been resistance ever since when American businessmen illegally overthrew the Kingdom of Hawaii in 1893. And by force, backed by the US Navy. And so essentially Hawaii is illegally occupied by the United States and has been. There's even been an apology resolution by President Bill Clinton. The state loves apologies, whatever. But it has this, there's an acknowledgement that there has been these constant battles of invasion and greed, and there hasn't been a time since Captain Cook where Native Hawaiians haven't been resisting for their sovereignty. Fast forward to even the 1970s, Kaho'olawe, I want to honor those Kia'io protectors who took over Kaho'olawe from the U.S. military from bombing. So there's something about the Pacific in general that everyone likes to use the Pacific for their bombing and military practice. Hawaii is no different. So they bombed Kaho'olawe, U.S. military practice. There was a huge movement. A lot of Kanaka came through, protected that island, and we eventually got it back to Native Hawaiians, which is a huge victory.
Oh.
There's Pohakuloa. And so I could keep going as long as the U.S. is illegally occupying Hawaii as a nation. They continue 25% of Hawaii's military bases. And so essentially Hawaii is a military center, right? It's under, and the United States has actually over hundreds of military bases around the world to establish their imperialism. And this, I'm giving a really quick summary and context because fast forward to, it's no different from, again, this imposition of not only colonialisms that are still happening, but really within colonialism is capitalism, right? And this need to own and take and profit over their individual interests. So with the movement of Mauna Kea, which has actually been happening for quite some time, when the very first telescope went on top of that mountain, and now there are 13 telescopes. We're moving into 2015, 2019, Kanaka Maoli have been fighting to protect the sacredness of that mountain, conservation land mountain, and this constant need, and there's Mauna Kea, and then there's other developments happening. There's this constant need to have to protect and conserve land in Hawaii. And there's this just constant contradiction of this idea of paradise and tourism, and at the same time we're bombing paradise, and at the same time we're trying to overdevelop paradise, and at the same time we're also not thinking about fresh water in the middle of salt water. So it's this ongoing greed that we're constantly and have been resisting since that time of 1700s. So that's a really quick answer, and I think that is where we all can we can understand basically American or United States imperialism that has impacted all of us and continues to do so.
Water is life.
Oh.
Fatima?
I want to start by contextualizing a little bit about what Lebanon even is, because Lebanon as a nation is a colonially constructed nation, really implemented by the French under the French mandate, but it began under Ottoman occupation, which occupied our lands for 400 years and created Mount Lebanon as a space for minority religions to have kind of an autonomous space where they get to exist. And that kind of continued to feed under French mandate, where they created a country that bred exceptionalism and fed an entire peoples this idea that they are separate from their brethren, that they are different from their brethren, and stripped a lot of the social networks and social fabrics that connected Lebanon to places like Palestine and Syria, where we share a language, a dialect, a culture in many ways. And today, the people who are governing Lebanon, many of them are relics of the Ottoman Empire. So they're literally people who, their great-grandfathers held authority under Ottoman occupation of our lands. And we really live under very much a feudal system, where we still have no census of our population since 1932 when the French occupied us. And we still live under a governing system that was created by the French that separated our people into 18 different sects. Each sect has its own judicial system. So it's really this a space that continues to exist under divide and rule imposed by the French. And we really see that today in the division of the people as Palestine is resisting and as Palestinians are experiencing ongoing genocide. Where southern Lebanon is actively being bombed by the Israeli occupation, and from southern Lebanon, the resistance is actively bombing Israel for the liberation of Palestine. And in the north, all you see is honestly like a small group, predominantly queer Lebanese folks, standing up in resistance for Palestine. And that has looked like opposing things like the putting up a weeks-long opposition in front of the Egyptian embassy for the ways that they are not opening the border at Rafah to allow aid into Gaza. And so the rest of the country, though, the rest of the people, humbly believe, are not doing their part to stand for Palestinians. And that is because of this exceptionalist idea that they are separate from our Palestinian brethren, even though we, again, share a culture, share a history, and share a language. And these are to our closest relatives, the Palestinians. The Lebanese people as a whole are also not doing much for our siblings in Sudan, are not doing much for our siblings here in Huchion, on Turtle Island, in Hawaii. There is an absence of understanding of the ways that we are interconnected. And I think this is a remnant of this colonial rule and colonial imposition of separation, of divide and rule.
Besides coming here today, how can we all be better allies and support you and support people in these places like Lebanon, in places like Sudan, in places like Hawaii? We can start here.
I really think the answer to that is love. And I think it begins with learning to love ourselves as peoples and as a community, and through this love, dismantle colonial narratives that dehumanize us. And it is through this process of learning to love ourselves, our communities, our histories, and to therefore also face the ways that we as communities have caused harm, that we also get to build love with communities who are also in the struggle against empire. And in learning to love, first of all, ourselves and then one another, it also shows us what it looks like to have genuine joy for one another's liberations and our victories and our ongoing struggle, because this is a long-term struggle. And these little victories, we get to show up with genuine jubilation for one another. But it also teaches us what it means to genuinely show up and grieve together when either one of us or any member of our community is going through pain in the struggle and in the violence that's ongoing too.
The question is how we can support Sudan.
Yeah.
I think if you want to support Sudan, the first thing you can do is really learn about what is happening there. Sudan's a country that straddles the lines of North and East Africa. Sometimes we're Arab, sometimes we're African, sometimes we're Black. It really depends on the context of who's talking about us. I'm not so concerned about what the label is that happens. What I'm concerned about is your effort in solidarity. So regardless of how you see Sudanese people, how we fit into your framework of justice and freedom, know that we deserve that too, that we deserve access to our land, that we too are indigenous to Africa and searching for peace in our homelands, that we don't deserve to be minions in a global war for resources, whether that be water or timber or gold or people, like the actual people that become resources, right? So I would say learn about Sudan, understand that we are people who deserve freedom and justice. There are plenty of websites that you can go and donate and give to. There is a website called Eyes on Sudan, very easy, eyesonsudan.net. If you just do a / type in donate right after that, it's a whole list of verified donations, websites, GoFundMes for folks who are either raising funds for physicians and medical folks who are staying in the country to save lives right now, folks who are staying in the country to rebuild it once it is ours again, and folks who are trying to evacuate to save their own lives, right? All verified funds, all very good. eyesonsudan.net/donate. You can also follow and search for Darfur Women Action on Instagram, Darfur, DARFUR, Women Action. It's a group that advocates for women in Darfur. This genocide in Darfur has long preceded the genocide that is now taking over all of Sudan, right? The folks in Darfur have been suffering under colonial rule and mass genocide for decades. So Darfur Women Action, their platform is overreaching. It's beyond and bigger than the current war that we're seeing right now, and they support women who are migrating, who are taking care of young children, who have been, suffering under colonial rule and military rule for so many decades, and really need support. Many of them have been in refugee camps their entire lives, raised kids in those camps. So your funding to Darfur Women Action just like sustains this nonprofit indefinitely. And you can follow me if you want to end up finding more people who just are posting about Sudan on a regular basis. I don't post on my social media on a regular basis. However, when I do post, all the tags that I post are always people who are talking about Sudan. And so my Instagram is @ShahNoor, SHAH, 2 underscores NOOR. Thank you.
I would say that my answer is a combination of both. First, I would say kapu aloha. Aloha, love, is one way to share that. But I want to make it really clear that when you hear the phrase kapu aloha, that's not a passive action. It's actually action, it's not passive. So I would say a combination of being in kapu aloha, which I can break down in a bit, and also education, right? First of all, everybody that's here in this space is already showing an action of solidarity and support and learning about what is happening in all of our nations. And I also want to say a couple more things. When I started to get involved with protecting the Mauna Kea movement, Mauna Kea being the largest mountain in the world from the bottom seafloor to its summit, and protecting the top of that summit, I was actually here back in 2019. There was a huge rally at UC Berkeley, and shout out to all the student movements that are happening, that are happening right now. No different from Mauna Kea. And at UC Berkeley, it was really amazing how people came together to not only learn about what was happening in Hawaii, but to come and support in solidarity. And Palestinians came and showed up and were in solidarity with us in our movements. And not only that, but we actually, how many of you remember before what Pepas, it was Reams? Right? So at Reams, we actually held a Mauna Kea and Palestine workshop event to educate people and to explain what is happening, because these movements they do not act alone. And it was already shared. There's that idea of divide, right? Divide and, conquer, separate, isolation, individualism. But the truth is, whether it's through social media, it is a collective front. When we come together, we are powerful. And that's just the truth. The other thing I would say in order to support Hawaii and what has been happening, in addition to social media, in addition to, there's tons of petitions out there. You can go to Mauna Kea awareness, education and awareness, Aina Mamona. There are a lot of different media outlets on social media and Facebook to get involved with. Definitely you can ask me after if you want to find out. But I also want to say, find out who your watershed is. Find out the land and understand the land that not only feeds you, but also the source. We are so disconnected that individualism has literally created a disconnection that if I go up and ask you, do you know where your water comes from? And I don't mean the tap. I don't mean the water infrastructure reservoir that feeds our cities at this point. But I'm talking about where it actually begins on that mountain, in that waterway. Do you know all of the native people in the lands in which have literally been compromised because of our interest of water, especially when we're living in an urban environment? Let's start by learning about our creation, like what being in alignment to our source. And so I just want to say that I like to play with words, language, and the word resource has been used often to talk about extraction. But what if we took that word as a reminder that resource is a reminder to return to source, to have that primary source knowledge. So being a part of a movement like protecting different Aina, or the land that sustains us in Hawaii or in the Mauna Kea, has really led me to other protections of sacred places that we are right here today, other Maunas, other mountains, other watersheds, other waters, has taught me that all of these mountains and waters are connected, so why should we be any different? So if we want to support each other, we need to be like our mountains. We need to be like our waters. We need to be like our waterways. That is a way to support each other, to support not only Hawaii, but everyone here in this room, in all of our lands that feed us. That is the ultimate. And I plant that seed, not just for now, but I'm thinking, right, generations ahead. And also before me, those who dreamed for us to be here and knew. I always say that my ancestors just didn't listen to anyone. That they didn't, right? But we are literally the seeds of resistance before you, all of us here and in this room. So yeah, we continue to support each other by planting our gardens together and planning for the future.
And yeah, I think a key word has been for all of us is genocide, and we've all experienced that, and I think that's why it's super important for me to come and stand up for all. 2 minutes? Oh. Okay, so we only got a couple minutes left, you said? 2 minutes. Okay. So, all of us, we're gonna go through this real quick. All of us have experienced genocide, and I just wanna know, through all of this colonization and all this stuff, what has really, just for us, it's like our ceremony, our language has kept through all of this. I just wanna know what has been steady and been resilient from you guys' cultures to today.
Okay, I'm going to start with, I'm going to be very quick. I'm going to start with a quote from my favorite Lebanese rapper from his song Firnez, which says, شو بيصنع وحدة التاريخ وبيجمع فرقة القلوب أكثر من صراع طويل مع طغاة وإسرائيل. What builds a unified history and brings together distant hearts goes beyond the long struggle against tyrants and Israel. And I think that this is what remains and what survives, is actually the food that we share, the dance that we share, the kind of colloquial sayings that are shared, the kind of community coming together that is shared. In the town where I grew up, we still go to the same place, the Ain, where we get the water from the mountains that my great-great-great-great-grandparents went to. We still do Dabke in ceremony and in celebration and in resistance, and that has been there since the Kanaani days. So even before Islamic coming into the land and becoming Arab and Arabized in that way. And so these continuations of legacies in our people exist long before struggles against tyrants, and will continue to exist long after our liberation and victories against tyrants.
The question is how, like, what has survived the genocide in Sudan?
Yeah, like for me, it's like culture, language, stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I'll say my research on Sudan really focuses on how music, dance, popular culture, and performance are ways in which we resist and revise and remix our culture in the midst of genocide, war, and displacement. And I could talk a lot about that. But I don't necessarily want to wax romantic right at the end. So I will just say the way that we survive is through your advocacy. How about that? So when you talk about freeing Sudan, that we continue to live on, so go to all those websites I listed earlier. Hashtag keep eyes on Sudan on all your posts. This is bigger than a 1-year war, bigger than a 4-year revolution, bigger than a 30-year dictatorship. This is a lifetime, multiple lifetimes, generations of colonization. Free all our people everywhere. Ashe.
Oh.
So I'm going to answer this through metaphor. No, actually, I'm going to call in the Ohi Alehua blossom. It is a beautiful red flower that grows right after a volcanic action. So it actually grows through transformation and destruction. So the earth comes, Pele or the volcano erupts, and then there's this beautiful lehua that grows. So we would say that that lehua blossom reminds me that after every revolution, every hulikia that overturns, there is the hi'iaka, there is the restoration. So after the revolution, what are we reminding us? What is the resolution? And that resistance of not being the end of life, but just the continuance, reminds me to keep going, to ku'e, to resist. And so it's the aina itself that gives me all the things that I need to know when I'm in alignment with that.
Oh. Give a big O for our guests. And yeah, check them out on Instagram, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and give everyone in this panel a follow as well. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. Peace and love.